In this video, I'll show how we create a reproducible project using a computational notebook. I'll use a predictable file organizational scheme. The scripts are hosted and distributed via GitHub. Then I'll render my report from code. In the last step, I'll publish the report to a web hosting site. To demonstrate a computational workflow, the foundation of my reproducible workflow will rest on open source tools, including R and the Quarto publishing system. I'm going to use R as my coding language. Using the RStudio IDE, I'll compose my script in a Quarto notebook. We can see a demonstration of downloading both R and RStudio, as well as Quarto extensions. Quarto works with multiple coding languages. I'll choose R, so you'll see an example of a Quarto computational notebook on the left and a rendered report example on the right. Next, to demonstrate reproducibility, I'll start with an existing project that is publicly available at GitHub. Here you see the RStudio project with the file organizational scheme I mentioned earlier. I want to start by cloning my ready-made project. I'll copy the Git repo address from GitHub into my buffer, then switch to RStudio and start a new project using the version control option. Again, I'm using the version control option because the code for this reproducible project is distributed through GitHub. Here you see my project cloned from GitHub, but available for my modifications in RStudio. As a side note, what if I wanted to start a project from scratch? I can simply start a new project locally rather than clone from GitHub. Using the Quarto approach, I can easily generate 4 different types of projects: generic, website, blog, or book. In this example, I'll generate a website from scratch. Many other report expressions are possible. Moving back to the project I just cloned from GitHub, we can open the index.qmd script in the RStudio script editor. Since my output expression is a website, I'm using the file name index.qmd to orchestrate the workflow of my code. Within the script, we can see code chunks interspersed with natural language, or prose. Each code chunk can be executed separately, or I can run all the code chunks sequentially. We can see the green code execution progress bar at the bottom of the script. And we can see how each code chunk generates outputs that are displayed in line with my explanatory prose. Since we're using Quarto to assist us in our academic writing, let me highlight how footnotes and bibliographies can be generated. You can see that footnotes are part of my prose, and a window at the bottom of the script editor allows me to add explanatory text. This is done by using the Insert Footnote feature. Stay tuned to see how the footnotes are rendered in the final report. Beyond manual footnotes, RStudio integrates well with bibliographic management tools such as Zotero. More simply, we can generate full citations by pasting digital object identifiers, or DOIs. Here we use metadata to leverage report elements such as title, author, or output type. For example, in the _quarto.yml file, we declare a report format and assist with project description. Additionally, each .qmd notebook has a YAML header at the top of the document. As needed, the metadata in the YAML headers are used to customize sub-elements of our report expression and document artifacts. Before I render my report, I want to show you how easy it is to modify my reproducible report by adding a visualization. Remember, I cloned this code from GitHub. So this code is a copy of my regular workspace, and I'm doing it this way because, as part of this case study demonstration, I'm pretending to be a person reproducing somebody else's work. So let me add this example code for visualization to a subsection of the soon-to-be rendered output. In this case, the script is in the scripts subfolder and the file name is 02_notes.qmd. I'm going to add document structure in the form of a second level heading. And I should add some explanatory prose, but I didn't in this demonstration. Then I can add a code chunk to contain code that generates a new visualization in my research workflow. Again, this is simply a demonstration of how to add elements to a report. As you can see, we can execute that code chunk to generate the example visualization. Now I can render my modified research workflow, including my new visualization, into a new version of my report. In this case, my report expression is a rendered website. So I'll click the Build tab and then the Build Website button. Feedback on the rendering process shows up in the Background Jobs tab, but the output, that is the report files, will be in the _site folder. I can change the name of the output directory in the YAML configuration file, but in this case, the default output folder is fine. After rendering the report, I can view the report locally. Since this rendered report is a website, stay tuned to see how I publish this website to a web hosting site of my choice. Here is the local copy of the report rendered in RStudio, or I can easily look at the documents in a web browser. And here we can see the example visualization that I added to my analysis. At the top of the page, page 2, notice how some of the _quarto.yml metadata is used to help me identify the authors of the project. Now I'll use Git to stage and commit the changes I made in my analysis. Remember that in this video, I cloned my working copy of analysis to demonstrate a change as if I were not the controlling author. Now I'm going to make the same changes into my working copy of record so that I can show you how an author with full permissions uses Git and GitHub as part of a reproducible workflow. We can see here the blue screen is my regular installation of RStudio. I use that for all my work. Again, I'm making the same changes by copying and pasting the demo visualization into my draft report. Then I'll re-render my output. I do this by clicking the Build tab and choosing Render Website. Remember, in this case, my output expression is a website. The rendered website can be seen here in the RStudio viewer, or open the report in a web browser. Note the rendered visualization example. Since we re-rendered and updated the report, we want to update the version control. So I go to the Git tab and stage and commit the new changes. RStudio Git client highlights the added changes in green, while the highlights in red are lines that have been deleted or modified. Now we can provide a commit message. Finally, we can push our changes to GitHub. Now we're ready to publish our report expression. Since we developed a website, we can publish this report to a web host. There are many web host options, and one of the easiest is to publish to the free hosting site quarto.pub. RStudio makes this easy. Click on the Terminal tab, then type Quarto Publish and give a target, in this case Quarto-pub. Quarto will take care of the details and has clear documentation to guide you through the process after you create a free account. If you choose to relocate your website to another host, that is a straightforward process because the web output is standard and can be hosted anywhere. As with any web host, we have a web address that we can share with our target audience. Let's see how this report looks when hosted at quarto.pub. Now let's take a look at the GitHub representation of our reproducible workflow. We can see that this code project has gone through 13 revisions or commits. A moment ago, we used RStudio to push our last commit up to GitHub. So we can refresh our browser and see GitHub records all 14 commits. Clicking on the commit link allows us to see the timeline for each of the commits. Clicking on the hash ID for any of the commits allows our audience to see the changes we made. Again, with red highlights for lines that are removed or modified and green highlights for new or modified code. Now, going back to the main repo page for this GitHub repository, you can see that I document the web host URL. This allows our audience to see the hosted final report as of the last rendered revision. We might also want to list that URL in the README file. Now, clicking on that web address, we see the report hosted for our target audience, complete with the example visualization changes we made to page 2. See also how the footnotes and metadata get rendered. This concludes our case study of a reproducible workflow for scientific publishing.